Hello, hello, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm your host, Nick Brlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat and the Pittsburgh Penguins, who we will be discussing, of course, today, as we do every single day on this show. They got a win last night. Horwat, they're able to get off the schneid, end their 4-game losing streak, and get the 2 points against the Colorado Avalanche at Ball Arena. 5-2 victory, and we're going to break that win down and also discuss a little bit about Sidney Crosby, because we really haven't talked too much about him this season, which is crazy to think about considering the type of year that he's had. And then we're going to finish this episode off with one of the fan favorite segments that we do. We do it 2 or 3 times a year. This is the first time we're going to be doing it for this iteration of the Pittsburgh Penguins. That is the 3 M's: must sign, maybe sign, and move on. A little crystal ball look into the future at the Pittsburgh Penguins offseason. But let's start with the game last night, Horwat. 5-2 victory over the Avalanche in the first half of a tough back-to-back. Second half will be later tonight against the Dallas Stars. What did you think of Tristan Jarry? Because he has been somebody that has caught the ire of Pittsburgh Penguins Twitter a whole lot, simply because he has not been performing up to standard since he returned from his injury on February 20th. Last night, he looked like the all-star Tristan Jarry, did he not?
Oh, of course he did. And then he's been catching the ire of the fan base, and for good reason. I mean, you get pulled 4 times in 11 starts coming back from an injury. You just can't make saves. He was riding a 3-game losing streak heading into that one, albeit with a very good or pretty decent outing in the third loss of that. Still, we just expected more. We expected better. And you know what? I think we can confidently say, at least, that his issues are no longer an injury issue. He looked good. He looks to be healthy. We've gotten some clarification from Sullivan that it's that he's pretty healthy. He just needs to get up to speed. We've gotten some words from Rob Rossi, who heard on the inside that it definitely is no longer a hip issue, at least. Of course, that doesn't mean there's not other lingering injuries. These guys do play hockey. There's injuries everywhere that we don't know about. They're all playing through, but that's different. This being said, it looks like Jarry is as healthy as he's going to be. And he's performing well. Like I said, 2 games in a row. The loss against Ottawa, which again, he didn't face many shots. He couldn't pull too much from, but he at least looked healthy and looked to be making enough saves. We just couldn't get enough goals that game. And then in Colorado, we got enough saves. We got enough goals. And we could probably confidently say he is pretty well to being back health-wise. He's got some good wins. I mean, that win against the Rangers, he looked shaky, but he was there. The loss to the Rangers, the first one, not the second one. The first one looked good. 31 saves. In a loss, but 31 saves. So it's he looks to be getting there. He looked like the all-star last night.
Yeah, 28 saves on 30 shots, and there were several opportunities for the Colorado Avalanche where it was side-to-side saves made by Tristan Jarry, which was the thing that I was hammering him for. I know, obviously, he would like to have that second goal back. I thought it was deflected. Clearly, it was not when it came in. Just not a good look all around on that one. But if you take that away, a really good performance from Tristan Jarry. The first goal was off of a turnover right in front. Not much he could do about that one. But I thought that he did look steady. He did look solid. And for the first time in a long time, the Penguins won a game because of Tristan Jarry. Now, you can go around and say there are other players that had good performances, and we're going to do that in a little bit. But Tristan Jarry, the way that he was able to play in that first period, especially, Nathan MacKinnon was gunning right out of the gate for the Colorado Avalanche against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And Tristan Jarry was able to shut him down on a lot of really high danger opportunities. And the Penguins defense, as we'll talk about, settled in. But Tristan Jarry was sharp from wire to wire against the Colorado Avalanche. And as you mentioned, he looked pretty decent against the Ottawa Senators as well. It's just a matter of continuing to keep gaining traction, gaining momentum, and gaining confidence in his case, getting him back to where he was earlier in the season when he had gone, a month without losing in regulation.
Yeah, and not only that, the gaining confidence and gaining speed, I think, is the big one. Because, I mentioned to you the one time Sullivan said he's fully healthy. It's just getting him up to speed. Well, what was the first discussion we had there? It was, well, he's been back for this amount of time. You say you need more practice, and then he immediately canceled practice. So, you're not doing yourself any favors, but at the same time, now that he's played in, I believe it's 6. Is it 6 straight games now that
I
he's
believe so, yeah.
started in?
Since the Philadelphia game.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Oh yeah, because he started the Rangers game, so that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 straight games. I believe that's the most this season for consecutive starts for him, and that's one way to build your speed back up. One way to build your confidence back up. Just throwing you to the wolves, because in those games we had some losses. He, 4 straight to be exact, and he was pulled from a couple of them. So it's not like this was an ideal way to get back onto things, but it's doing the trick. It's getting there. It's getting him to where he needs to be. I don't know if he's fully there yet still, but he at least looks far better than what he did.
And for the Pittsburgh Penguins' sake, that can't be a one-off. Like, I know we said that he played all right against the Ottawa Senators, but I'm going to say that was his best performance against the Colorado Avalanche that we have seen in 2023. So that can't be a one-off. They're probably not going to see him until Saturday. I doubt that they play him on back-to-back nights tonight against the Dallas Stars. So you probably see him Saturday against Washington, a team that historically he has not done great against. It is one of the 4 teams in the Eastern Conference that in his career he has over 3 goals allowed average against. So it's a chance for him to kind of dispel some demons and continue building on track to hopefully push towards the Stanley Cup playoffs. But good on Tristan Jarry for yesterday's performance. Definitely looked like a top 15 goaltender in the National Hockey League with the way that he was able to play against the defending Stanley Cup champions, who, let's not get it twisted, they were on a hot streak of their own. They had won, I believe, was it 5 or 6 straight heading into that game against the Penguins. And the Pens, as a team, I thought played really well, but Tristan Jarry, especially in net, was able to keep them in it early while they got their legs.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 6. So it's that was one of those games where, sometimes 2 streaks just can't continue. It's not often you see losing streaks hit 5 games. It's not often you see winning streaks hit 7. I'm not going to say that's kind of what played into the Penguins' favor, but sometimes that's just the way it is. 2 streaks like that don't happen very often. I mean, look around the league, you'll see at any given moment, streaks of 2 wins, 1 win, an overtime loss, a loss, 2 losses. For the very bad teams, 3 losses. It's not often you see stuff like this. Especially this year, the parity in this league is amazing. So, knocking things down to, ending winning streaks and ending losing streaks, it's very good for the Penguins and puts them back into a playoff position. But you got to win again now because both the Panthers and the Penguins play tonight. You got to get a clean win somehow, some way against the Dallas Stars on the second half of a back-to-back.
Yeah, the Penguins got a little bit of help on Tuesday evening as the Florida Panthers fell to the Philadelphia Flyers on the road. But somebody that used to play for the Flyers is playing for the Penguins. Not a lot of people want him on the Penguins, but he did factor in very heavily to the win last night. That's big Jeff Carter. And, not a lot of people have been happy with Jeff Carter. I think myself and you as well, Horwat included. But for a long time, it was Jeff effing Carter. Now, we finally saw people on social media say, hey, throwing it back to the big Jeff Carter days. Remember when he was scoring 4 goals in a game against Buffalo? He was a key piece, a key deadline addition before he signed the Albatross contract. That's what it seemed like a little bit last night. 2 goals from Jeff Carter. I'm not going to lie. He's been garbage for a long while, but he definitely showed up in an important spot for the Penguins, and they definitely needed it as well.
All right, great. That's 1 game. Next, keep it going. Here's the thing. Like, I get people want to have the discussion of Jeff Carter of how good of a game he had. That's great. I want to see it consistently now. This isn't the end all be all of Jeff Carter's back, guys. No, he's not. No, he's not. I don't think too many people are even saying that. I just think we're happy I think we're all in shock, actually.
Especially the second goal. Dumoulin to Carter for a massive third period goal.
Yeah, and I don't even mean to be mean toward Jeff Carter here. Taylor Haas posted the video of him saying, "I don't care what you guys write." Well, that's a good thing, sir. That's a good thing that you don't care, because people have not been kind.
No.
Me included, you included, many others included. But good on him. Good on him for not caring. You're really not supposed to care what we say. You are supposed to be the one that goes out there to perform. And you did it. And good on you. Now keep this up so we can get back to the memes that we used to love having with you. Like, we did at one point, all of us did love having Jeff Carter on this team. Now, if he's going to take advantage of this role and do a lot better than Teddy Bluger did on the fourth line, you know what? Then we are net positive.
When you put it that way, I kind of understand it, because when has Teddy Bluger ever scored 2 goals in a massive game in that fashion when you need it the most, right? Like, that doesn't happen very often, or didn't happen very often. But still, with Jeff Carter, I think when you look at the way that he's played, even last night, apart from scoring the goals, he doesn't do anything special, and he can't hurt you. There were a couple times where I just watched Carter and I was like, he still doesn't really belong out there on the ice. And I don't want to keep badgering on the guy, because at the end of the day, if you don't have it, you don't have it. And I know that we're also badgering on Mike Sullivan for putting him out there in situations. I mean, Carter took, I believe, almost every defensive zone faceoff in the final 5 minutes with the lead. Now, part of that might have been, let's try to get Carter the hat trick. But I think part of it is also, at this point in the season, let's just make sure that we're getting the win. I really don't care who scores the empty net goal. Good on Brian Rust for scoring. Maybe that's something big for him. He gets off the schneid. But at the same exact time, you need to be careful with Jeff Carter going forward, because while he does still have that goal scoring acumen that he's always had throughout his career, you don't forget to score goals. You saw where he scored both of them. Down low, one of them was a deflection. The other one, he was real close to the net and got a one-time opportunity on a power play. If he's going to do that, that's great. But at the same time, you still need to remember that he's not the guy that's going to be able to go out there and put up 15, 16, 17 minutes a night of complete production. He's going to be the guy that might get these once in 10 games where he comes out and he's able to make a very important play that puts you up or extends the lead in an important spot. But at the end of the day, defensively, he's a liability. And every other area of the ice, I still see him as a liability, because if you watch that game last night, apart from scoring the goals, that's exactly what he was.
Yeah, and that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. He's still playing sheltered minutes, and that's exactly what he should be at this position of his career and at this position of the season. You want him out there during times you know he's going to do his best, and that is winning draws in the defensive zone. Sure, now get it out somehow, and don't put on the ice for a goal against. You know, plus the other thing too, like, yeah, he took every defensive zone draw in the last 5 minutes. Well, yeah, that entire last 5 minutes, the Avalanche had 6 players out there. That's kind of frightening to think about whenever Jeff Carter's also on the ice quite often for goals against. Right? So why handicap him like that again? It's neither here nor there, and Penguins got the win overall, and that's all that matters. But Jeff Carter just still has to be used properly here.
Yeah, he does. Good on him, like you said, throwing it back to the big Jeff Carter era in Pittsburgh. Hopefully, you see more of that. Hopefully he's able to get some goals and be a positive difference maker for this team. But again, like you said at the beginning of all of this, you cannot take one game and say big Jeff Carter is back. Same thing with Tristan Jarry. You cannot take one game and say, all right, cool, Tristan Jarry is back. But it certainly is a good sign, and it certainly helps that they got those important performances in such a pivotal game for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So that's nice to see. And then also, really quickly before we head to commercial break, the defense, again, second game in a row, very undermanned. I think it's 4 defensemen that are out.
Yeah.
They held down the fort. Now, early on, they struggled with Nathan MacKinnon, but most teams are going to struggle with Nathan MacKinnon. His speed, his puck handling, it's something that's hard to handle to begin with. And then when he comes out like a ball of fire, like he did on Wednesday evening, it makes it even harder. But, they settled in as the game went on. And again, I thought it was a pretty good performance from the defense.
All things considered, yeah. It's the same thing with the Ottawa game. Like, yeah, there was 2 goals given up and yeah, we lost, but the defense was doing what they could. They are severely undermanned. You have 4 regulars out of the lineup, 3.5 if you're going to say Kulikov shouldn't be a regular, fine. Still, you're missing, that's half to more than half of your defensive lineup. And we still have Brian Dumoulin out there. Taylor Fedun's getting his first NHL rep since 2020. The bottom line is the third line is 2 right-hand shots between Friedman and Fedun. So you got players playing on off sides. It's Chad Ruhwedel's in this season is in there. It's an interesting little concept of a defense, and holding the Ottawa Senators, who are really good at scoring goals when you in a vacuum, holding them to 2.
One of the hottest goal scorers in the league since 2023 started.
Yeah. So holding them to 2 and then holding the Avalanche to also 2. Good on you. That's, again, we don't have many regular NHL defensemen in there, but stopping that kind of caliber of offense is a great way to step up in this sort of situation.
So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to do something that I don't think have done enough of this year. We're going to talk about Sidney Crosby here on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. Sidney Crosby just continues to carry this team further and further on his back, and man, has it been an impressive year for the Pittsburgh Penguins captain. Year 18 of his career, and he continues at this point to just reach accolade and milestone and accolade and milestone. It seems like every single night there is something new that comes out from either NHL PR or Penguins PR that Sidney Crosby has accomplished another feat that few other have, whether it be in the franchise or in the history of the NHL. That continued last evening as, of course, he scores one of the most beautiful classic Crosby backhand goals that you are going to see from anybody in the National Hockey League, which clinched his 11th 30-goal season of his career, which I believe is tied for 4th most for somebody to do it on a single team in NHL history, something like that. I mean, he also became the first player in NHL history to score 30 goals at the age of 18 and then 35 plus. Now, is this something that everybody was like, he's gunning for that? No, nobody knew that before last night. But again, stats and analytics, they find ways to say, you know what, this player is doing something that has never been done before, and it continues with Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, there was that one. There was, I believe, the 11th 30-goal season is tied for most in Penguins history. There's that one as well. We don't think of Crosby as a goal scorer too much, right? But here we are. I mean, he's won the Rocket twice, but he's only hit 50 goals once. It's these 30-goal seasons. Yeah, there's 11 of them, but we don't think about the times where, look at that, there's a 29 in there in 82 games. There's a 28 somewhere else. He's a goal scorer, yes, but I mean, he's obviously a playmaker first, and just the way he's able to continue doing this at his age, this is just incredible stuff no matter what, right? It's 500 career goals, 547 now. It's hard to come up with the correct words to do this because really what hasn't been said about Crosby yet.
Yeah.
But it's just impressive that he's doing this kind of thing this season. Age of 35, no real help around his team. I mean, he's got help on his line. But below him, I mean, he's willing to carry this team as far as it'll go. Him, Malkin, Letang, you get those Zucker and Gensel in there as well. They're having great seasons, and it's a testament to just how good Crosby's performing this year. I mean, put it this way, too. Last year, he played 69 games and had almost an identical stat line. Last year, he had 31 goals, 53 assists for 84 points. This year, in 71 games, 30 goals, 54 assists for 84 points. And time left to play.
Yeah, 11 games left.
Yeah, but that's the other thing, too, that's not getting discussed enough. that both him and Malkin played every game so far this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that they need, obviously. Without that, the Pittsburgh Penguins would not be anywhere close to a playoff spot because Sidney Crosby, you mentioned, obviously, we talked about his goal scoring. You mentioned he's a playmaker and the assists and the ability that he's able to do. That's all the offensive zone. Let's not forget, the man was voted the most complete player by the NHLPA for the third consecutive season. There's a reason that he continues to basically own that category of the NHLPA voting every single year. It's because he puts on a show on both ends of the ice. He does not give up in the defensive zone. He does not normally take plays off. He's doing it down low. You saw it last night. Him versus Darren Helm. He's not shying away from anybody, ever. And I know that a lot of this is common speak. Everybody obviously knows how great Sidney Crosby is. It's not surprising, but it's still impressive to see nonetheless. And when you look at his performance throughout the entirety of this season, the question then becomes, how much does that transverse? That's not the word for it, but how much does that get the attention of the national media, right? Because we talked about it earlier in the season that Sidney Crosby should be in the Hart Trophy conversation. Now, of course, he's fallen back. If you look at the odds, Connor McDavid is the clear favorite, and Connor McDavid is going to win the Hart Trophy. He's minus 5,000 right now, so if you're going to place a bet on it, you're not going to get much in return. Sidney Crosby sits 10th right now, which is tied with Nathan McKinnon at plus 10,000. Now, he's never going to win the Hart Trophy this year. Nobody's going to win other than Connor McDavid. But do you think that if the Pittsburgh Penguins make the playoffs, Sidney Crosby should be at least top 3 in MVP voting this season?
That's honestly really hard to answer because because when you watch Sidney Crosby play every game, you want to say yes, right? You just want to throw it out there. Yes. The thing about this is you have to look at what everybody else is doing. You cannot just look at Crosby in a vacuum. You have to look at obviously what Connor McDavid is doing. That needs no introduction and not even really worth having the discussion of anyone else winning this award this year. But then you got to throw in Leon Draisaitl was also top 5 in every major statistical category this year, and he's McDavid's teammate. He's 4th in the league in goals. He's 4th in the league, 3rd in the league in assists, making him 2nd in the league in points. But then you have to look at what Erik Karlsson's doing this year on a very bad San Jose Sharks team.
Well, here's the thing: the two guys you just mentioned aren't higher than Crosby in the odds right now. Draisaitl and Karlsson aren't ahead of Sidney Crosby in the MVP odds, and that's the thing. When I look at the MVP odds and I look at the names in there, I do think that there's a conversation that should be had about Sidney Crosby being higher when it comes to the voting. Now, the odds and the voting are two separate things, but I think Sidney Crosby will finish higher in the voting than he is currently in the odds.
That's fair, but another thing about the odds too is, I mean, I don't know how sports books work, but I mean the fact that McDavid pretty much has this locked up, that I immediately throw the odds out. Then I immediately throw betting odds out at least, right? Because if it's that much of a lock, unless even if he gets hurt, he's probably going to win, right?
Yeah, he has 138 points.
Yeah, if McDavid is that much of a lock, I immediately throw out betting odds just because what good is that going to do anyway? Especially because it's not like unless this betting odds is running like horse race and it is the 1, 2, 3, you can get those sort of wins in there. That's just me. And plus, I'm also not good at sports betting, so don't take my word for it. But
yeah,
it kind of doesn't mean much because then they're very clearly not looking into, like I said, Draisaitl's numbers here, the resurgent season that Karlsson is having, and is going to earn him a Norris. Let's just say that one. He's going to win the Norris this year.
Yeah.
Or I'm trying to just think of anybody else. David Pasternak's got 48 goals.
Pasternak is up there. Here's the thing. With those two guys, they shouldn't be high in the Hart Trophy thing. One, Erik Karlsson might be the most valuable player on the San Jose Sharks, but the San Jose Sharks are one of the worst teams in the league. So he's out. Leon Draisaitl is playing with the best player in hockey. He should not be up there, right? Especially considering without Connor McDavid, it's not like the Edmonton Oilers have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and the top team in the Western Conference. They have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and they're fighting for either 3rd or 4th. It's a real close contest right there in the Pacific Division. So without Connor McDavid, and it's 138 points, even with Leon Draisaitl, they're not they're not going to be a shoe-in playoff team. So that's why they're like that. Here are the odds, so we can get it through there. McDavid is the finalist. Other players that are ahead of Crosby and below McDavid: Pastrnak, Ullmark, Kucherov, Rantanen, McKinnon, Jack Hughes, Jason Robertson, Thompson from Buffalo, and Tkachuk. Those are the players ahead in the odds.
Jack Hughes is an interesting one because I totally forgot about the Devils and what they're doing this year.
Yeah. But to me, here's how I break this down and why I say Crosby should be, and then we'll move on to a different discussion. One, the East is much tougher than the West when it comes to getting into the playoffs this season. There are good teams that will not make the playoffs in the East. In the West, Calgary has not been good for most of the season. They still have an outside chance. Nashville, nobody expected Nashville to be anywhere close. They haven't been playing that well. They sold at the deadline, and right now they're the last team out, if I'm remembering correctly. So the East is already tougher than the West to make the playoffs, especially when you consider who Crosby has around him. If he gets into the playoffs, I think that should go into the decision-making there. Pastrnak is having a great season, but he's playing on the best team, almost the best team in the history of the NHL. Ullmark, same thing. He's going to be the Vezina Trophy winner, playing behind the best team in almost NHL history. Kucherov and Rantanen and McKinnon, they all play on much more complete teams. I mean, Rantanen and McKinnon have each other. Kucherov, there's a reason that team has been to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. So I take all those players out of it for that reason. They're playing on great teams, whereas Crosby is not playing on a great team. That leaves Hughes, Robertson, Thompson, and Tkachuk. If the Penguins make the playoffs, 2 of those players aren't making the playoffs, Tkachuk and Thompson. So I take those 2 guys out. It becomes Hughes, Robertson, or Crosby for 2 of the final 3 spots. That's why I think Sidney Crosby deserves to finish in the top 3, because process of elimination, looking at everybody else, I think his sample size and his performance this season, when considering all of the factors, is more impressive than most of the guys ahead of him.
Yeah, I get that too. I think, Jason Robertson being up there is another big push because it's a breakout year for him. Another thing too is these guys. One thing that I see where you're going with it all, but these guys it's humans voting for this. It's not robots, right? It's not.
Yeah, I'm not a robot, and I came to that conclusion.
Right, but it's like they're the humans of it that, MVP is the writers, right?
Yes.
The writers are going to see what they have in front of them, which is Connor McDavid doing his thing. They're going to see their players doing their thing. Crosby's going to get his votes. Definitely. There's no doubt about that. He's going to be in the running somewhere. But a lot of these guys like to look at breakout seasons. Why do you think the coach of the year is always, hey, your team wasn't supposed to be good this year. Here you are. If that one's even writers, I was going to say Vezina, but then I remembered Vezina's GMs, which is very weird. But almost every year it is the Taylor Hall year. Hey, your team wasn't supposed to be good. You weren't supposed to be good. And here you are. MVP. Connor McDavid's going to win this one by a landslide. Leon Draisaitl might get some names in there because, again, these writers don't look around too much at the league, but see Leon Draisaitl as number 2. Maybe what holds him, Draisaitl, back is the fact that they're not far and away the best team in the league, despite these numbers. That's something. But Jason Robertson, breakout season, right? Breakout season with the Dallas Stars. First in the West. Not even in their division. I think they're first in the West. Sorry, no, they're not. Vegas is first in the West. What the hell happened to the West? Anyways, Dallas is first in the Central. So they have that running for them. Like I said, Jack Hughes leading the New Jersey Devils, who, again, much like Taylor Hall, hey, the Devils weren't supposed to be good this year. They have this really good stud that is carrying them in. Boom. They're a very good team this year, but you get where I'm coming from. I just don't see Crosby hitting the top 3. I'd be shocked if he hits 5.
See, shocked if he hits 5. To me, just that sounds asinine to me, but that's me. Top 3 is tough.
It's a lot of good players in the league, though.
There's a lot of good players in the league, but again, it's like you said, it's humans voting on this, and when humans see Sidney Crosby, they're going to see somebody that like, hey, I should look into that more. Whereas some of these other players, think about also, not all of these writers watch all the games.
That's
None of
exactly
these
it,
writers
yeah.
watch all of the games. So who is on national TV more? Sidney Crosby or Jason Robertson? Sidney Crosby's on national TV more. Who gets talked about more in the national spotlight? Sidney Crosby or Jason Robertson? Crosby does. Crosby gets talked about more than Hughes. Now, is that enough to outweigh the performance of these other guys? That remains to be seen, and that obviously goes into the eye of whoever is looking at the situation. But to me, he's right up there with what he's been able to do with the team around him than any of these other guys. So I think it's an interesting conversation. I think it's one that's probably going to be had several times between now and the end of the season when the awards are announced. I believe the finalists are announced in during the first round of the playoffs. So between now and then, it's going to be an interesting conversation. But there's another conversation I want to have with you really quickly about Sidney Crosby. And it's very sports talk radio-esque, but bear with me on this. I think it's an interesting conversation to have. What would solidify Sidney Crosby more on the Mount Rushmore of hockey? Finishing top 5 in scoring or winning a 4th Stanley Cup?
Top 5 in scoring. Because as much as Stanley Cups are considered the great end-all be-all of victory, there's a lot of players that you don't think of that have a ton of Stanley Cups.
Yeah, all the Montreal Canadiens from the original 6th era.
Yeah, all of the like third and fourth line guys that maybe stuck around through the Oilers dynasty. All the third and fourth line guys that stuck around through the Islanders dynasty. A lot of guys you don't think of that have Stanley Cups. It doesn't earn them a spot in that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It earns them a random spot in the Hall of Fame, i.e. that defenseman from Edmonton whose name is escaping me. That shows how
Kevin
good
Lowe.
he was. Yep, him. Not to say he's bad, but you get what I'm saying. Whereas these numbers are pretty solid. I'm trying to think who are we putting on this Mount Rushmore, right? Like, who are we putting up there?
I think the first 3 spots are pretty obviously Lemieux, Gretzky, and to me, Bobby Orr.
Yeah, it's going to be those 3.
Yeah.
Off the top, Crosby Lemieux only had 2 cups. Two. And not even that. Not 2 over the span of his career, 2 in 2 years. And he's still up there. Gretzky, 4, right?
Yes.
4 in 5 years, something like that. Again, not spanned over his entire career. As important as Stanley Cups are, in stuff like this, I also don't know off the top how many Bobby Orr had. That's I feel like it's a couple, but in reality, it is 2. Bobby Orr's career is also cut short. We always forget about that part, don't we?
I mean, so is Lemieux's, but yeah. Not as short as Bobby Orr's, but
right. And we still stick him up there. So suddenly, the cups don't matter to get on this Mount Rushmore. If you're tossing Yager up there, he's only got 2 in his first 2 years, and he didn't spread it out through the rest of his career, right? So this is not bashing the quality of winning a Stanley Cup, by the way. I get that. But I'd say at this point of his career, Sid's got 3. He's already got more than 2 of the guys we're discussing here. He doesn't need another one. At this point, what would solidify his spot on that Mount Rushmore more would be top 5 in points. He's already got more than Bobby Orr. Defenseman, career cut short, still got more than that. I think that just puts him up there. I'd say it's the points because it was the hype that he had coming into his career that he needs to do A, B, and C. Well, he's done A, B, C, D, E, F, G. He's done more than what was expected, which is impressive. So I would say it's the points, not the cups. Mostly because A, he's also kind of already on the Mount Rushmore, but B, he already has more than 2 of the guys up there. And is close to a third.
Yeah, winning that 4th Stanley Cup would tie him with Wayne Gretzky, Gordie Howe, Ted Lindsay, Paul Coffey, Nick Lidstrom, Chris Kunitz, all greats, all phenomenal, all great players.
I think Claude Lemieux has 4 too. In case
Claude Lemieux does have 4, yes. The only way that I would say winning a 4th Stanley Cup would solidify his spot more than a top 5 finish all time is if it happens this year.
Yeah.
Look at the team he has. If somehow, I don't think it's going to happen. Don't mistake this for me backing the Penguins as a Stanley Cup contender this year. If somehow the Penguins sneak into the playoffs and Sidney Crosby leads this team to a Stanley Cup in 2023, that puts him on the Mount Rushmore immediately. Like it does not matter what he does the rest of his career. That puts him on Mount Rushmore.
You're totally right. You're totally right. I mean, have this conversation is, well, he's already there, correct?
Some people would say that. Yeah, it's debatable at this point, but some people would still say that. I mean, Gordie Howe is somebody that comes up in that conversation a lot, obviously. He's Mr. Hockey. Alex Ovechkin gets brought up in that conversation from time to time as well, which is,
fair.
It is correct in stating that he is that caliber of player. He has had that caliber of career. But when I think all-encompassing players, Crosby has an edge to me over Ovechkin, even taking out the Stanley Cups. Now, if it's a Mount Rushmore of goal scorers in hockey history, Alex Ovechkin is 1A, 1B with Wayne Gretzky. So, but that's not the conversation that we're having.
No, it's not. But yeah, it's the Mount Rushmore is getting pretty solidified as Seth Malkin, Jesus, as Gretzky, Lemieux. Hell, if you wanted to have the conversation of Bobby Orr, you could, but Bobby Orr's on there, and then Crosby. That's getting pretty solidified. Gordie Howe's in the conversation. You could throw Yager in that conversation, for God's sakes. I mean, if we're talking professional hockey, the guy's still playing. He's 50, 51. He's still playing. So, those conversations are allowed to be had all around, but I think, A, Crosby's already there. B, he's already got more cups than two of the guys on there. And I just think a lot of people will look at points because, I mean, that's kind of what made Gretzky's career after he left Edmonton, right? He didn't win another cup, but you know what he did do a lot still? Score.
Yeah, he's the greatest point scorer in the history of the league, and that's probably going to hold up, I would imagine, forever. Like, it would be very hard. The only person alive right now that even has a chance at sniffing it is Connor McDavid, based on what he's doing this season. Like we said earlier, 38 points so far this year, but it's going to take a long time of continuously doing that for him to get into the conversation there.
I heard somewhere, hold on, I just want to cut you off because I heard somewhere that even for McDavid to hit that, he has to pick up the pace even more than what he's at. Like, that's how ridiculous the numbers are. I was waiting for you to say the only person alive that might be able to, that we think might have a chance at hitting that record is Connor Bedard, because he's at a clean slate. He's at 0 and has an entire career ahead of him to do it, because apparently McDavid's already off pace, which is stupid.
Yeah, he would have to be Gretzky level production for Yager level duration to be able to really get into that conversation.
Yeah, so that's not to like throw you off. I was waiting for you to say Connor Bedard because I thought that would have been very interesting, because I think he's the next possible option of someone who can do it. Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, if there's two people alive that can even have a chance, not even a good chance, but a chance, that tells you how long that record is probably going to stand up. But the last thing I will say about this before we cut to break and come back with our 3Ms is we mentioned top 5 scoring of all time. That is certainly within the realm of possibility for Sidney Crosby. As we all know, last summer he said that he might want to play up to 6 more seasons for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, nobody's going to hold him to that. His contract goes through 2 more after this year. But I wrote a story before the season about it. You can go check it out on Inside the Penguins about the pace that he would have to set through those 6 seasons to be able to catch and pass Ron Francis for 5th all time. He needed 90 points this year to set on that pace. He's at 84 so far. So with 11 games to go, it seems like at least in year 1, he'll hit the pace that I set for him earlier this year. Not that he actually paid attention to it.
He's got a good chance of getting there.
Yes. So with that, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, our 3M segment. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by Inside the Penguins. Horwat, there's not really much lead up to this one. It's our 3 M's. Must sign, maybe sign, and move on. There's 10 players for the Pittsburgh Penguins on the current roster with expiring contracts. We're going to put them into those 3 buckets as of where we stand right now. Now, normally we go through player by player and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give them one of these designations. But this year, it's a little different because there is a handful of players that there shouldn't even be a discussion about. They should just be moved on from. To me, and we'll get to your bucket in just a second, my move on bucket is automatically Brian Dumoulin, Nick Bonino, Dmitry Kulikov, Danton Heinen. Season ends, cut bait, goodbye. Don't even have the conversation. That's it. Who is your immediate move on bucket?
Those 3, and then I'm tossing Josh Archibald in there as well.
Those 3. Which other? I had 4 on that list. Is there one that you have in a separate bucket?
Those 4, and toss Josh Archibald in there as well.
Okay, so half of them you're immediately moving on from.
Right, that's who you say, because you said Dumoulin. Oh, that's because I'm not looking at the injured list here. You said Dumoulin, Kulikov, Bonino,
and Heinen,
and then tossing Archibald as well. So
that's 5. Interesting. I have Archibald in the maybe sign category
because
he's been good this year for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's cheap NHL depth that brings an intensity to the bottom line that obviously the Penguins are lacking throughout their lineup. He plays the penalty kill. And again, I'll say it again because it's the most important factor. He's cheap. I think there's no harm either way. It's going to be inexpensive. And when you have the amount of holes that they're going to have to rebuild the roster, I don't hate Josh Archibald as being a 4th liner again next season for the Pittsburgh Penguins, or being the 13th forward, which would be even better.
Yeah, I just feel like he's eating a roster spot for where this team needs to go. And because where does this team need to go? Focus on the youth, focus on some scoring depth. He's not young and he's not scoring. He's depth for sure, and he's, a prick to play against sometimes. But if we would have done this segment maybe like 20 games into the season, I would have said maybe you do keep him around, but just it's not that his play has grown old or stale or anything like that. It's just at this point, I do get the vibe that he's just eating a roster spot from what could be a young, youthful scorer.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
me. And that's a fair conversation to have, especially considering the fact that we all want the Pittsburgh Penguins to open up spaces for younger players, but I do think that there's other players that are going to be gone that's going to open these spots up regardless. I think Heinen is going to be gone. Bonino is going to be gone. Obviously, we lost McGinn and Kapanen at the trade deadline, which opens up spaces as well as next season begins. I just also don't think there's that many young players that are going to deserve a spot that's currently in this position and in this roster right now. I hope that the Penguins are able to go out there and get better players for the bottom 6. The question just becomes, can you get them at a discounted rate? Because at the same time, they're going to have other areas where they need to address financially, especially considering we're not sure what they're going to do with the defense. So I think if it comes down to it, I would not hate seeing Josh Archibald back with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think that he has performed his duties as 4th line right wing fairly well. He does not bring enough offensive upside to be considered a lock to come back in my eyes, but I think he does everything else pretty well. Obviously, you saw a couple of big hits from him last night on some big individuals. Like you said, he's a prick, and that's the best thing that he's going to be able to do. So I like what Archibald has brought, and I think that if he comes back on a cheap deal, maybe you re-sign him. That's obviously not top priority, but it's something that I wouldn't mind seeing if it happens.
Right. My other thing, too, is, he does lay hits a lot. Penguins are the top hitting team in the league, if you can believe that or not.
With some not words I don't want to say on this podcast kind of hitting. Yes.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine, but that's clearly what the Penguins are getting, right? They're getting a large number of hits from guys like Jason Zucker, like Josh Archibald. I mean, you lose Josh Archibald's hit total, okay? That doesn't affect too much because that's the only thing we're leading in the league, right? Is hits. So I'd say supplant his hits with a couple extra goals here and there, a couple extra assists, maybe some more defense. I don't know. We're not losing much with Josh Archibald. That's just kind of my mindset of he's eating a roster spot. That's the way I'm looking at it. I wouldn't mind bringing him back next year either. I'm with you on 13th forward. I like that option. I do, but it just eats up the space on the ice for a Puustinen, maybe a Svetkovsky finally, maybe a Hollander, maybe if Sam Poulin makes his step in. I'm not saying all these guys at once, but I'm saying that's another option. Boom.
Yeah.
And then adjusting the lineup as it goes, because
Yeah.
this whole bottom six needs changed. So,
well, yeah, the bottom six needs reworked immensely. And like I said, Josh Archibald, I'm not, banging the drum for him to be the first guy re-signed, but I don't think that the way that he has played has been poor. I would say that he's played to his ability and he's been actually deployed in the correct manner, which is something that we have not been able to say for every player in the bottom six this year. So I don't mind Josh Archibald. The other guy that I have in the maybe sign bucket is Jason Zucker, because the big question that comes with that is, what is the number? Like, what is the contract number? If you can get it where you can bring back Jason Zucker and still have room to rebuild your bottom six, to hopefully reconstruct your defense, then yeah, obviously you do it. He's a fantastic player in all phases of the game. But if it's going to be too expensive and it's going to handcuff what you can do around this roster, because this roster needs a massive upgrade this offseason, then you don't bring him back. I would love to see Jason Zucker back. I would prefer to see Jason Zucker back. But what is the number is the big thing that's holding me from putting into a must-sign category.
Yeah, this one's hard. You do want to say must, but you have to figure in the price tag. You have to figure in the age. You have to figure in the length. Yeah, it's so difficult because he's played so well this year, and you're just not sure. He's played well enough to earn a must sign. Like, let's be honest there, right?
Yeah, he's an important figure on this team. It's just, the business of hockey has screwed the Penguins so much this year, and it's going to continue to do that into the offseason.
And we know hockey. This is not guaranteed next year.
No.
This is not
look what happened to Danton Heinen.
Yeah, this type of production is not guaranteed next year. This type of health is not guaranteed next year either. And then there's the year after, assuming he's getting a multi-year deal because he deserves one no matter where he goes. Then there's the year after. This type of production is not guaranteed that year. This type of production and health is not guaranteed the year after that. It's not guaranteed year after year because that's just the nature of his style of play, of who he is. I would say you still bring him back for the sake of it's because he has that chance to bring it again, right? You try and get him at maybe 3 years for a relatively decent number, close to what he's making.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to be smart. You have to be smart. Like, this isn't, I mean, as much as we like Jason Zucker, this isn't Malkin or Letang that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I would say if you're able to, you get him at 3, because you know what you do with that, at least, is you line him up at the end of Malkin's deal. And then we probably part ways with Malkin when he goes back to Russia for a season, and that's the end of that. And then maybe, who knows what Crosby's doing? That's the signs of the times in 3 years. I don't know what this, because we're getting philosophical now and we're talking about Jason Zucker, right? It's, what does the team look like at the end of Jason Zucker's deal? Well, what does the team look like next season?
Yeah. This conversation would be vastly different if the Penguins hadn't re-signed both Rickard Rakell and Brian Rust last offseason, because at the very least, you have a top line from left to right with whoever's there, and you have at least one top 6 winger already under contract for Malkin's line as well. It's filling one hole instead of having to fill 2. So being able to have a guy like Rickard Rakell, who has been extremely, extremely underrated this year as far as the value he's brought to this team, and also having Brian Rust while he's having an off season, knowing that he should be able to bounce back in year 2 of that new deal, it makes it harder to bring back Jason Zucker. And then, of course, there's the Mikhail Granlund deal. But I think when looking at Jason Zucker, it ends up being, we would all love to see him back, but it has to be for a good number. And the question then becomes, how consistent can it be? So do you have him in maybe sign? Am I correct in assuming that?
I'm going to go with must.
Must re-sign? Okay. So must re-sign Jason Zucker for you. maybe re-sign for me. There's 3 players that really can drop all in the same bucket because I think they're cheap. I think they're good for the Pittsburgh Penguins bottom 6. And I think that I have been very impressed with at least one of these 3 players: Drew O'Connor, Alex Nylander, and Ryan Poehling. I have them all in the must re-sign category. It's not going to take much to get them back. Drew O'Connor, to me, is having a breakout season for a 4th liner. Could be a decent 3rd liner if he's put with the right people. Alex Nylander, I think, finally should deserve a shot at getting a 3rd line role, right? He's been blocked by so many players throughout the years, and now he's being blocked once again by a Danton Heinen, who they're going to hopefully move on from. He's being blocked from who else? Nick Bonino, whenever he's healthy, who they should hopefully move on from. Like, he's being blocked by a lot of guys. Hopefully the Penguins re-sign him, give him an opportunity to get a 3rd line shot next season in a similar role to what Danton Heinen is for the Penguins this season. And Ryan Poehling, listen, he was a throw-in for the deal. He's your starting 4th line center and a PK guy next season. Like, there's no doubt in my mind this organization loves him, and I think that he's a guy that the Penguins have to go back and re-sign, because I know we are saying they need an entirely new bottom 6, and I know Jeff Carter is likely not going anywhere, but you need to start somewhere, and getting guys like Poehling and O'Connor and Nylander who are cheap, that's a good start for me for the bottom 6.
Yeah. Maintenance is here.
Yeah, there you go. But really quickly, must sign Tristan Jarry, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Iceberg. We will see you guys next time.